Hi everyone, it's James here from Pro Tools Expert, and I'm very excited about today's gear review. Down here in the rack, I have a Focusrite Red 4 Pre, one of the very first to actually come into the UK, and I'm quite excited. Why am I so excited? Because to me, this is probably the closest thing we've found to an all things to all men or women recording interface. Now, this is a three-part review. Why three parts? Because there's three main areas to this box. One, it's a Pro Tools HD interface. Now, that means it'll work with Pro Tools HDX, Pro Tools HD Native, or Pro Tools HD Thunderbolt Native. It uses the little Digilink connectors on the back, and there are two of them. Now, why on earth would there be two of them? This thing actually presents in Pro Tools HDX as four Pro Tools HD interfaces, HDIOs effectively. Now, that's 64 channels in and 64 channels out. Now, in actual fact, in Pro Tools HD, it's actually only 58 in and 64 out. But 58's still an awful lot from one U. So in this first part of the review, the first part of three, yes, three, we're going to be using this as a Pro Tools HDIO. We'll be using it with my HDX card, which is in my Mac, and I'm going to use the 4 built-in Focusrite Red quality mic pre's, and I'm also going to be using the mic pre's digitally connected from my Audient ASP008. On the back of the Red 4 Pre, there are actually 2 ADAT opticals in and out, giving us 16 connections over ADAT optical, 2 pairs. But we're just going to need one set in this case. Recording 10 tracks of drums, we'll use the mic pre's that are built in and some of those, and it will sound gorgeous. But let's have a look at the front panel so I can show you exactly what I've done to set this baby up. So here we are up close and personal, and you can tell it's a Red 4 Pre because there's a nice big Red 4 on it. Next to the 4 are the 2 instrument or DI inputs. Now these double up and come in on the first 2 mic pre channels. And if we scan over here a little bit, you can see the first of our 3 LED backlit screens. Now the first one is to do with our 4 mic pre's, which are built in. Red quality mic pre's, so they're going to sound lovely. And I can control all of them from these 4 buttons. If I hold, I can actually go down and do some settings. So I can scroll up and down using this here wheel. And I can turn phantom power on and off. I can change the type if I want to. Line, instrument, or mic pre. So the next 2 windows are to do with metering and monitoring. At the moment, I'm metering my ADAT inputs 1 through 8. If I want to, I can change that by hitting the meter button. And I can monitor the network inputs or my analog audio inputs. I'll go back to ADAT because that's what's most useful at the moment for me in this case. If I hit the monitor button, I can see what's monitoring, and I've got my main level control for my monitors. So this thing's got a very powerful monitoring control built in, which we like. Scrolling over a little bit more, I've got my 2 built-in headphone amplifiers. These both come up and have controls on the front panel as well. Jacks for the headphones, and the power on-off switch. However, one of the most useful features comes into play when I hit both the monitor and meter buttons at the same time. We're now into the kind of global mode. At the moment, I'm in Pro Tools mode. I can switch between Pro Tools HD mode and Thunderbolt I/O if I want to. I can change my sync source. Now, I'm using ADAT 1 because I've digitally connected the ASP008 into ADAT 1. Now, I'm not sending any kind of clock source back. And again, this is really, really important. If you're using any kind of digital connection to any device, something has to be the master, something has to be the slave. In this case, I'm using the Red 4 Pre as the slave. That's the only time, I think, during this whole recording process we're going to do that. But at this case, I'm getting the clocking signal down the ADAT light pipe connection from the Audient ASP008 into the Red 4 Pre. Another setting here, which is really handy, I can actually make sure it keeps my 48 volt phantom power on when I turn the unit off. And I can also automatically remap the RedNet Dante connections from the back of this thing, which is really, really handy. So when we look at this in Dante mode as a audio over IP interface, that's going to be a really handy feature. So around the back, we start on the right-hand side with the 4 XLR inputs to the mic pre's. Now, these are Red Evolution mic pre's, and Focusrite say they deliver the lowest noise and distortion performance they've ever achieved. Their op-amp design, rather than transformer balanced like the normal Red 500 series, and they're based around a THAT 1580 chip. Now, I'm not sure what that means, but I know they sound absolutely spectacular. We then have our 25-pin D subs for our 8 line-ins and 8 lines out. We then have the monitor outs left and right, which in this case I've connected up to my Trinov, but obviously normally you connect these directly to your monitors. We have the SPDIF I/O, then above that we have the 2 mini Digilink ports which are connected off to your HDX, HD native or HD Thunderbolt native cards. We then have the 2 Thunderbolt ports, our 2 sets of optical I/O. Now, and this is the best bit, not only do we have BNCs for word clock, we also have BNCs for Pro Tools HD loop sync. Now, this is really, really important if you're going to be using other Avid style I/Os. You can actually use Pro Tools built-in loop sync properly with the Focusrite Red 4 Pre. Next to that, we have the 2 network connections for Dante and obviously the power input. So, looking in the hardware setup of Pro Tools, you can see over here on the left-hand side, there are 2 HDIOs listed. Now, I'm pretty sure I said to you a moment ago that the Red 4 Pre addresses as 4 HDIOs. That's absolutely true. It does. If you have 2 mini Digilink cables linked between the 2 outputs on the back of your HDX card and the 2 inputs on the back of the Red 4 Pre. I, however, only have 1 long mini Digilink cable because normally on my HD to 192 I link through. In this case you can't do that because it's using 60 ins and 64 outs across the HDX network. So in this case it's only going to show up as 2, but to be honest, 2 gives me 32 ins and 32 outs, which in this case is plenty. You can also see I'm clocked internally, which is fine because I'm actually clocked externally through the unit. It's absolutely normal to do it this way. It just means that Pro Tools itself is clocked to its own interface, not to some other third-party clocking source. Now, one of the oddest things that I think maybe the guys at Focusrite might need to look at is how the Red 4 Pre actually is labelled up within hardware setup. Because as you can see from this chart, this is actually how the Red 4 Pre addresses across the 64 outs and the 60 ins of the HDX network. However, it doesn't show up as that in hardware setup. I've been able to work it out and sort of figure my way around it, but it's not exactly obvious and it's not exactly accurate, to be honest. However, once you get over that sort of slight hump of being able to get this thing to work, it is absolutely brilliant. Which is why, in this first part, we're going to track some drums. As you can see here, I've got my nearly normal kind of drum kit mic layout set up. 2 kicks, 2 snares, hat, toms, and overheads, and we'll use this drum track in the next 2 parts of the Red 4 Pre review. So Pro Tools is set up and ready to go for this session. I've got a great sounding headphone feed from the headphone out on the Red 4 Pre. The 4 Red Evolution mic pre's in the Red 4 Pre, which is funnily enough, I think where it got its name from, sound great. They've got the kick in, kick out, snare top and bottom. And all the rest of the mic pre's are digitally going in from the Audient ASP008. We are ready to rock and roll. Or in this case, maybe swing a little. So there we go, that's all the drums to tape, as it were, even though there was no tape involved. But moving on. Now, at this stage, I'd like to say I've not applied any processing on the way in. There was no compressors or limiters or anything like that. The sound you were hearing was that of the mics into the pre's and those 4 Red Evolution mic pre's in the Red 4 Pre. Gets confusing, doesn't it? Sound absolutely awesome. The kick drum sounds lovely. The snare's got a really nice big fat roundness to it. Really, really great for drums. Now, if I wanted to get a little bit more top end, a little bit more air, if you will. All 4 of the Pre's in the Red 4 Pre also have the air setting, which is the same as in the claret interfaces. Now, I really like this for vocals and for kind of more airy instruments, if you know what I mean. Strings, winds, brass, all that sort of stuff where it really lends itself to the top end. For drums, where I want a kind of a darker tone, like a kind of a jazz feel like this track, I haven't put the air in, but that air setting can be really nice for hats and for overheads, things like that, where you want a bit more, well, air. So there you go. That's using the Focusrite Red 4 Pre with Pro Tools HDX, HD Native, or HD Thunderbolt Native. Now, in the next video, we're going to track some bass and some guitars, and we'll be using the Red 4 Pre as a Thunderbolt I/O plugged straight in to my MacBook Pro. We'll also be tracking the bass and guitars with plugins instantiated, so you'll hear exactly how low that round trip latency is. But for now, hope you enjoyed that. I've been James from Pro Tools Expert, and I'll see you again soon for some more gear talk.